be happening? Mom, stop.
It was just another quiet evening when Sarah received the first call. She was curled up on the couch in her apartment, sipping on a cup of tea, scrolling aimlessly through her phone. Her grandmother, Evelyn, had passed away 2 months ago, an unexpected stroke that had taken her in the middle of the night. The family had been devastated, but Sarah, especially, had felt the loss keenly. Evelyn had been more of a mother to her than a grandmother, and her passing left a hole in Sarah's heart that she wasn't sure how to fill. The call came late, around midnight, when the city was wrapped in a veil of silence. Sarah frowned at the unfamiliar number flashing on her screen. She had no idea who it could be, but something in her gut urged her to answer.
Hello?
She said, her voice still hoarse from the day's stress.
Sarah.
The voice on the other end was soft, familiar but not quite right. It was raspy, as though it had traveled through miles of static before reaching her.
Sarah, it's Evelyn. I'm sorry to call so late, dear, but there are things you need to know.
Her heart skipped a beat. The voice sounded just like her grandmother's, warm and reassuring, with a touch of weariness that Sarah had always associated with Evelyn's aging voice. But that couldn't be possible. Her grandmother was gone.
Grandma?
Sarah whispered, her throat tightening.
How's this happening? You're...
I'm dead, yes.
Evelyn's voice interrupted, as though reading her thoughts.
But you need to listen to me, Sarah. Something's not right.
The words sent a shiver down her spine.
What do you mean, Grandma? What's going on?
I can't explain everything now.
Evelyn continued, her voice trembling with urgency.
But there are people around you, people you trust, who aren't who they seem to be. They're lying to you, Sarah. You need to watch them carefully.
Who? Grandma? Who are you talking about?
Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the phone tighter.
I can't say their names over the phone. They'll know.
Evelyn replied, her voice growing fainter.
But there's one in particular you need to watch out for. Someone very close to you.
Grandma, what do you mean?
Sarah's voice was barely a whisper, dread pooling in her stomach. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone in her hand, her heart racing. Had she imagined that? Was it a prank? But no, it couldn't have been. The voice was unmistakable. Evelyn's voice. She tried calling back, but the number was no longer in service. Panic clawed at her chest as she sank back into the couch, staring at the blank screen. Her mind raced through all the possibilities. Was it a late-night hallucination? A trick of the mind, grieving her grandmother's death? But deep down, something gnawed at her. Something felt wrong. That call hadn't been a mistake. It hadn't been a dream. The next day, Sarah could hardly focus. The call haunted her, replaying in her mind over and over. The cryptic warning, the tone of Evelyn's voice. There had to be some explanation, but she couldn't shake the feeling that her grandmother was trying to tell her something important. She tried to ignore it, but the sensation of being watched followed her everywhere. At work, she found herself glancing over her shoulder, her thoughts consumed by the conversation she had heard the night before. She tried to rationalize it, grief playing tricks on her mind, but it was no use. She couldn't forget it. Later that evening, as Sarah settled into bed, her phone rang again. It was the same number. Her heart stopped. She reached for the phone, her hand trembling as she answered. "Grandma?" she said, her voice barely audible. "Sarah," Evelyn's voice came through, once again raspy and faint. "They're watching you, dear. It's not just me. They don't want you to know the truth. They want to keep you in the dark. But you have to trust yourself. Trust no one else." "Who, Grandma? Who's doing this? Who's watching me?" Sarah's mind was racing, trying to piece together the puzzle her grandmother had left her. "Your mother," Evelyn whispered, as though every word took effort. "She's hiding something from you. I know you don't want to believe it, but the truth is out there. Follow the signs, Sarah. Trust your instincts. You'll see the truth soon enough. The line cut off abruptly. Sarah sat up in bed, her heart thumping in her chest. Her mother? But why? What could she possibly be hiding? She'd always been close to her mother, their relationship one built on trust. The thought that her mother might be involved in something sinister made Sarah's stomach churn. She didn't sleep that night. Over the next few days, the calls from her grandmother became more frequent, each one growing more intense and frantic. Evelyn's voice grew weaker with every conversation, but the urgency never waned. She spoke of people in Sarah's life. Family members, friends, who weren't who they claimed to be. Some were hiding secrets. Others were linked to events Sarah couldn't yet understand. Her mother, once a comforting presence, now seemed distant, cold, and secretive. Sarah began noticing odd things. Unexplained meetings, strange phone calls she would abruptly end, and cryptic messages that didn't make sense. One evening, she walked in on her mother staring at a photo of Sarah's grandmother, her face twisted in an unreadable expression. "Mom?" Sarah asked, the words slipping from her mouth before she could stop them. Her mother's eyes widened, and for a moment, she seemed startled. "Oh, Sarah, you're up late." "Mom, is there something you're not telling me?" Sarah pressed, the suspicion gnawing at her. Her mother's face hardened. "You need to stop dwelling on things that don't matter. Your grandmother's gone. Let her go." But Sarah couldn't. Not with the calls still coming. Not with the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That night, Sarah received one final call. Her grandmother's voice was weaker than ever, a mere whisper. "Sarah, you have to know. Your mother. She wasn't supposed to. No, it wasn't natural. I died because of her. She... The line went silent. The next day, Sarah confronted her mother, demanding answers. Her mother's face twisted in an expression Sarah had never seen before. A mix of fear and guilt. "You shouldn't have come looking," her mother whispered. "I never wanted you to know." Suddenly, Sarah understood. Her mother had been involved in something dark, something that had claimed her grandmother's life. And now, it was coming for her. As Sarah turned to leave, the phone rang once more. This time, the voice on the other end wasn't her grandmother's, but something far darker. "Don't think you've escaped, Sarah. You're next." The room grew cold. The door slammed shut behind her, trapping her in the house with the truth she wasn't ready to face. Would she escape the grip of the past, or would she become the next victim of the family's horrifying legacy? The air in the house was thick with tension. Sarah stood frozen in the hallway, her hand still gripping the phone. The words from the mysterious voice echoed in her ears, sending a chill that crept down her spine. "You're next." She spun around, her breath quickening as she looked at the darkened house. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside made her jump. It wasn't just the voice on the phone that unnerved her. It was the feeling of being watched, of something moving in the shadows. Her grandmother's cryptic warnings had never felt more real. She wasn't alone. Sarah's phone buzzed again, snapping her from her thoughts. The screen flashed, showing an unknown number. No, not unknown. A number she recognized. It was her grandmother's old phone number. She hesitated. Could it really be her again? Could it be another warning? Or was it something darker, something far worse? With trembling hands, Sarah answered the call. "Hello? Sarah." The voice on the other end was breathless, strained, but unmistakably Evelyn's. "You need to leave the house, now." Sarah's pulse raced as she clutched the phone to her ear. "Grandma, I don't understand. What's going on? What do I need to do?" "You have to leave the house. Do you hear me?" Evelyn's voice became more frantic. There's something in the walls, in the floorboards, something old, something hungry. It's waiting. Sarah's stomach lurched, her body freezing in place. She looked around, her eyes darting to the walls of the hallway, to the floor, the stairs leading up to her bedroom. Every shadow felt alive. "Grandma, what do you mean?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "What's in the walls? What's waiting for me?" But the line went dead again. Without thinking, Sarah dropped the phone, her heart hammering in her chest. Her grandmother's warning felt more urgent than ever. Something in the walls. She thought of the house, of all the years it had stood, of the secrets it had kept hidden. How many times had she heard strange noises late at night? How many times had she dismissed them as the house settling or the wind outside? But now, she couldn't ignore it any longer. Her grandmother had died under suspicious circumstances. Could it be that her death was somehow tied to the house? Was there a darkness that had been passed down through the generations, and now it was coming for Sarah? Her thoughts were interrupted by a loud bang from above, followed by a scraping noise. Sarah's heart leapt in her throat. Something, or someone, was in the attic. Taking a deep breath, she steeled herself. She couldn't stay here, not after everything Evelyn had said. But as she turned toward the door, her eyes fell on a photo frame on the console table. It was an old family photo, one she had seen countless times before. But something about it caught her attention now. The photo was slightly tilted, as if someone had moved it recently. Her hand shook as she approached it. She had never noticed before, but the faces in the photo, her mother, her grandparents, and her, were all staring straight ahead. But Evelyn's eyes were not looking at the camera. They were focused on something off to the side, her expression one of fear. What was her grandmother trying to tell her? What had she seen in that photo? As Sarah lifted the frame, a small folded note slipped out from behind it. Her heart stopped. She quickly unfolded the paper, her hands trembling as she read the words scribbled on it. "They are not who they say they are. Your mother is lying. She is hiding something about my death. Find the key." The words were cryptic, just like her grandmother's last messages, but one word stood out. Key. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The key to what? What was her grandmother trying to tell her? Her eyes flickered back to the door leading to the attic. The noise had stopped, but she could still feel a presence lurking above. Something ancient, something dangerous. It was almost as if the house itself was alive, watching, waiting. With no time to lose, Sarah grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer and headed for the attic. She knew she had to find the key, whatever it was, before it was too late. If you want to watch the second part and uncover the terrifying secrets Sarah will face next, let us know by commenting down below.